Why you can't hear the dialogue in Tenet? Wait. Wait. This motherfucker actually describes it? Hold on. Intro, what did they say? Don't try to hear it, feel it. What? Dude, I hated Tenet. Like, words cannot... Listen, this entire video is just going to be like, it's bad audio mixing because Loki, what's his face, is fucking deaf or going deaf. Tenet was amazing. Oh, God, it was so bad. It's so bad. Tenet was so bad, dude. It was so bad, dude. It was so bad. It's just like, I feel like Christopher Nolan fans are like, dude, Memento was so good. Let's just ride it. Like, it'll be good again. I promise. It'll be good again. Just like how Memento made me feel. You know what I mean? It just like that. Inception was all right. Inception was good. But Tenet was so bad. Oh my God. It was so bad. Tenet was the opposite of Dunkirk for me because Dunkirk broke my fucking ears after I watched it in the movie theater because it was so fucking loud. And then I couldn't hear anything in Tenet because I no longer have the capacity to hear anymore. So Tenet had like incredibly loud moments with like incredibly low audio. So much so that I thought... So much so that I thought it was like a joke. Like I thought my TV broke or something. Please take this L because Tenet was fire. Okay, we gotta see this now. Okay, shout out to the deaf and the blind, by the way.
Vault a separate structure within the other. Damage to one structure won't compromise the other.
As I've watched and read people talking about Tenet, it's become almost a meme at this point that many pieces...
This was so stupid too. I remember watching this part in disbelief. Like, they literally put half the shit that they added into this movie. They were like, we have cool shit that we need to, and we have a big budget. We just gotta blow money. Like,
of dialogue
this part is so dumb.
Are difficult to hear or almost completely unintelligible.
Well, we better put it out the hole before the bomb goes off, eh?
This problem has been developing for a while in Nolan's work, and it seems to have really come to a head with Tenet. But what's going on here? Christopher Nolan is working with massive budgets and is one of the most critically acclaimed blockbuster directors working today, so it's very unlikely that this is just shoddy filmmaking or an oversight. So there must be some reason why Nolan's films sound this way, and that's what I'm going to examine with this video. Is Nolan doing this intentionally, and if so, is that a good creative choice? Thank you once again to Mubi for making this video possible.
You can turn the... Wait, you can turn the volume down? No, motherfucker. In Tenet, the audio mixing is so dog shit that, like, you want to hear the dialogue and you literally can't hear it. It is so fucking low. And then there are other parts where the fucking music is so loud and you're like, what the fuck?
I first remember hearing complaints about the intelligibility of Nolan's dialogue during the release of The Dark Knight. Most of the complaints centered around Bane's mask muffling his dialogue.
Now we come here not as conquerors, but as liberators to return control of this city to the people.
At this point, I have to mention something that actually makes discussing this topic fairly complicated. I can show examples from these films, but the examples I show aren't going to accurately represent what it's actually like to listen to the film in a theater.
I gave him a humor setting so he'd fit in better with his unit. He thinks it relaxes us.
A giant, sarcastic robot.
because our sound systems are different at home, and in most cases the films are actually remixed for home release. So if you're listening to one of these examples and you're like, wait a second, I can hear every word they're saying fine, it might be because you're listening on headphones or a better sound system, or just because the mix of the home release is different from the theatrical mix. And theaters themselves are variable in how they sound. Just because you went to the theater and could hear every line of dialogue fine in one of these.
Yeah, like Dunkirk, you could hear everything, but it also, I think, gave me permanent hearing damage, like permanent ear damage. Like, I definitely blew out an eardrum after Dunkirk because it was so fucking loud, dude. Like, I think they just wanted you to... I think Dunkirk was like, you want to have tinnitus because that's what soldiers will get. So we want you to feel like you're literally like you fought in war.
These movies doesn't mean that if you went to another theater,
it's a great movie, though.
You hear the same thing, but I'll talk more about that later. For The Dark Knight Rises, while the Bane thing was annoying to a lot of people, it didn't seem to really detract from the movie too much. If anything, people disliked it for other reasons. But the complaints resurfaced with Nolan's next film, Interstellar. This time, the complaints were louder and more common, and people felt like they were missing key pieces of dialogue.
Keep that aim right at me.
There were some complaints about the dialogue in Dunkirk,
I'm on him, bailout.
but it's not a very dialogue-heavy film, and so again, it didn't seem to be a big problem. But then last year, Tenet hit, and rather than improving, the problems seemed to have escalated. At this point, it seems like even some people who were fans of the...
I'm a fan of the Nolan, the Nolan color palette, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it, though. I like that.
Film are open to acknowledging that some lines were difficult to hear, and saying some of the dialogue was unintelligible.
The aesthetic is nice.
A pretty uncontroversial opinion about Tenet.
The color grade is...
What's going on here? Why is this happening? Well, I think there are two key things that are contributing to this problem. After Interstellar, the complaints about the dialogue were so numerous that Nolan directly addressed the issue in an interview with Hollywood Reporter. We made carefully considered creative decisions. There are particular moments in this film where I decided to use dialogue as a sound effect. So sometimes it's mixed slightly underneath the other sound effects or in the other sound effects to emphasize how loud the surrounding noise is. It's not that nobody has ever done these things before, but it's a little unconventional for a Hollywood movie. This scene from On the Waterfront is a great example of the kind of technique that Nolan is talking about.
You.
Honest to God,
And this scene from Terrence Malick's Tree of Life is another great example.
Okay, guys. That's like... Okay, those are unique scenes. That's supposed to emphasize how loud it is, not the entire fucking movie, dude. Like, it's a little different when it's happening throughout the entire fucking movie. Okay? Like the gimmick is to emphasize how loud it is. If the other characters are not responding to how loud it is and having a normal conversation, then you are the one who is not hearing the fucking conversation. They are. They're having a normal conversation. They're like, yeah. Like, oh, isn't it crazy? Like, oh, okay. It's not a fucking creative decision at that point, dude. That's bullshit.
6 months.
In both cases, the filmmakers clearly feel like the image, sound effects, and facial performance are more important.
Also, the other part about it is that the other part that is like stupid is that in Dunkirk, it is the fucking loud noise in the background, right? But in Tenet, it's the soundtrack. So what's up? Like half the time, it's literally the soundtrack that's it's muffling the voices. So are you supposed to? Are other characters hearing the soundtrack? There's music going on in the background, like the score.
Than hearing the lines of dialogue. And they're emphasizing those elements by taking away the audience's...
The funniest part is the fucking music is great in Tenet. Probably the best part of the entire movie.
Ability to hear what's being said. Nolan is clearly trying to use this technique
Literally
in several
great.
places in Interstellar, like this one.
Well, this little maneuver is gonna cost us 51 years.
You don't sound so bad for pushing 120.
agree with the idea that you can only achieve clarity through dialogue. Clarity of story, clarity of emotions. I try to achieve that in a very layered way using all the different things at my disposal, picture and sound. In theory, I think this is a totally valid technique. For example, if I turn up the music, it emphasizes how loud it is. In sound design, you're dealing with two things: the actual intensity of the sound and the intensity of a specific sound relative to the other sounds in the mix. By drowning a sound we're used to being able to hear out with another, it implies an intensity to the second sound that may not be there naturally. When I watched Interstellar, I saw it in 70mm IMAX. That will be an important detail later. But when I saw complaints about the sound afterwards, I was confused. I didn't really understand what people were complaining about. Yes, I had difficulty hearing a few lines, but like Nolan pointed out, I assumed it was intentional and that those lines weren't important.
Thanks.
Please note that all of our sound equipment is functioning properly. Christopher Nolan makes the soundtrack with an emphasis on the music. This is how it's intended to sound.
At the time Interstellar came out, I pretty much accepted this explanation. But Tenet was a different story. For scenes like this, where you can't hear some of the dialogue,
That's weird.
what you can't hear isn't really important. This is clearly Nolan intentionally obscuring the dialogue. Nolan is playing with sound in an interesting way in this scene, bringing the vocals of the Freeport attendant to the surface only when he's really giving a key piece of information.
From their private planes, of course.
And to be honest, I get what he's trying to do here and I kind of like it. But that explanation doesn't account for a scene like this.
Got that shocking for an intelligence agent.
Here, the dialogue is pretty important exposition. And when I listen at home with headphones on, I can make out what they're saying. But when I saw this
scene was dog shit for the sound mixing, but it was also dog shit in general. I'm telling you, they were just like, all right, bruv, we got fucking catamarans, right? It's sick, right? They look fucking cool, yeah? All right, let's put a fucking scene in it with catamarans, bruv. That's it.
in theater, I could barely understand a word of what they were saying.
Just literally, the movie's already long as it is. You did not have to have this. You did not have to have any of this in the scene.
And that brings us to the second component of this issue.
Can I recommend a tailor?
I'll manage. You British don't have a monopoly on snobbery, you know.
What? Not a monopoly, more of a controlling interest.
When it comes to picture and sound, not all theaters are created equal. Some theaters have much higher quality, top-of-the-line sound systems. And on top of that, how good the sound is in an individual theater depends on how well-aligned and calibrated the sound system is. In an interview with IndieWire, Nolan said this: "We made the decision a couple films ago that we weren't going to mix for substandard theaters. We're mixing for well-aligned, great..."
Oh my God, dude. Everyone that defends Christopher Nolan is so whack. Oh my God. Every part of his responses are making me hate him more and more and more and more, dude. Oh God, it's so bad.
Theaters. So when filmmaking...
No wonder his fucking fan base is a bunch of Elon simp level fucking sycophants.
Are mixing the sound of a film, they make decisions based on how they want the film to sound creatively, but they also have to make decisions based on maintaining clarity across a variety of different quality levels in theaters. Nolan, however, is saying that he's focusing solely on crafting the experience for top-of-the-line theaters. So a line like this
Well, we better pull it out of the hole before the bomb goes off, eh?
might be inaudible in a poorly aligned theater, not because Christopher Nolan doesn't want you to hear the line, but because he's only paying attention to whether or not that line is clear in a well-calibrated, well-aligned, top-of-the-line theater. So every time he's pushing the intelligibility of the audio to its edges, he risks losing clarity in all of the theaters that aren't perfectly aligned. When I saw Interstellar, I saw it...
Guys, Tenet was made to be confusing, okay? That's why the audio needs to be unintelligible. There you go. That's the take. So you make it even harder to fucking comprehend what's going on, okay? That's it. So that all the dog shit fucking Christopher Nolan fans can turn around and be like, you simpleton. You simply do not understand. Tenet was actually a masterpiece, and you don't understand how, because your tiny brain can't comprehend.
in 70mm
That's it.
IMAX.
That's why.
So I got to see and hear the film the way Christopher Nolan intended. But when I saw Tenet, I saw it at a lower end local theater whose projection and sound quality are subpar even compared to other smaller theaters. And watching Tenet, I really had a hard time understanding a lot of the dialogue.
You first.
So what's the solution here? Is Nolan making a valid creative choice, or does he need to change his ways? Making the choice to make some dialogue unintelligible is a valid creative technique that any filmmaker is welcome to use, but a filmmaker declaring their intent and the audience perceiving the intended effect are two different things. I'm not saying the audience is always right, but if a large portion of your audience is repeatedly misunderstanding your creative intent, you might want to re-examine how you're using that technique. If audience members are confused about whether or not they're supposed to be able to hear a line of dialogue, they'll be thinking about that and not about the effect Nolan is trying to get across. Basically, how intense the emotion or sound is in that scene. One of the big differences between the On the Waterfront clip and some of the places where Nolan is using this technique is that in On the Waterfront, it's very clear we're not supposed to be able to hear this line. And because of the way the story is constructed, we already kind of know what he's saying. In Nolan's films, it's not always clear if the dialogue that you can't hear is important or not. I don't think confusion is the effect that Nolan is going for, and so if most people are perceiving it that way, he's essentially trying to produce a certain effect and failing. That said, sometimes audiences are too conservative and are shocked or confused by new techniques when they're introduced to them, but eventually assimilate that into their understanding of film language. But this is a complicated issue because it doesn't end there. We have to examine the other aspect. If Nolan says, trust me, if you can't hear...
I don't get it. He's literally saying he brought it up. He brought up like, oh, well, it's a deliberate reason for why he's doing it. Oh, it's actually on purpose. But, you know, it might not be on purpose in a lot of other areas, right? And it clearly isn't. Because if it was like one or two scenes and it's a gimmick to like showcase how loud it is, that's one thing, right? But then he doesn't rail on him enough. You know what I mean? He's not like really criticizing him. He's like too timid and too worried to criticize the creative liberties, I guess, Christopher Nolan is taking.
Has hug.
The line of dialogue is because I intend for you not to hear it, and then turns around and mixes his films in such a way.
Dude, leave the art house to the appreciative audience. Dude, this is literally a fucking blockbuster movie, dude. What art house, dude?
Just got my first modern vaccine shot.
Nolan defenders think like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is art house, dude. I swear to God. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. If you think Christopher Nolan is making like art house flicks, then you're literally a moron.
That in a lot of theaters, you can't even hear the dialogue he intends.
You are one step removed from the MCU Andes. I'm just letting you know. Okay, I'm going to ban you for... should I do 1 week or 1 day? This guy has not stopped saying it's pronounced Tenetus. Like, literally, how long? Let's see how many. If it's more than 7 times he pronounced... Okay. That's a... What are we thinking, boys? What should I do here? Okay, I'll do 1 hour. I feel bad. Maybe they'll shut the fuck up.
For you to hear. Audiences are going to lose trust in his creative voice. I didn't get to see Tenet in IMAX, so it's hard for me to know if it was actually any clearer in a better aligned, higher end theater. But it seems to me that Nolan is alienating a large portion of his audience in order to make the experience as good as possible for a very small group of people. The crazy irony is that in my video about Tenet, I argue that Christopher Nolan has a big problem with exposition. And when I watched Tenet in theaters, because I couldn't hear a lot of the dialogue, I missed a lot of the exposition, and I almost enjoyed the film more than when I watched it at home and could turn subtitles on and could read every word, because in my opinion, a lot of the exposition actually hurts the experience of the movie. But even though those lines may not truly be necessary,
Nolan has no ability to write character. He's clearly shown how bad he is at it from Interstellar. He uses gimmicks like this to distract from this. That's why Dunkirk is good. He never has to actually deal with character. What do you mean? I'm sorry, sir. Did you notice that the character in question has a family? Yes. How do you deal with that? I'm just saying. The characters, they have children. There is a female love interest that will have a child, or the character will have a child himself personally. So very clearly, that's a lot of depth, okay? Always. Always, okay? Always and forever. How do you deal with that? That's called depth, sweaty, okay?
6 months.
I'm just saying. No, but this person is right. I'm being sarcastic, but it's clearly shown how bad he is at Interstellar. He uses gimmicks like this to distract him. That's why Dunkirk is good. He never has to actually deal with characters. Basically, a silent film. Tenet is pure. It's a silent film because you lose your fucking capacity to hear by midway.
if you feel like you're supposed to be able to hear them and you can't, it makes watching the film a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm generally a fan of filmmakers pushing boundaries artistically, but if the way they're going about pushing those boundaries causes the audience to reject that technique instead of broadening their view of what is valid as a part of film language, then it feels counterproductive. It's easy to give supremacy to the artistic vision of the filmmaker, but sometimes artists, even successful ones, make bad creative choices. Ultimately, it's Nolan's right to make the creative decisions that he wants to make, and it's the audience's right to stop seeing his films if they're bothered by them. And it's the critic and everyone's right to discuss what makes for a good and bad experience watching a film, as we all collectively bargain about what makes a good film. I doubt Nolan will change his ways, and in the book, The Nolan Variations, he makes this comment. I actually got calls from other filmmakers who would say, I just saw your film and the dialogue is inaudible. Well, I love that Nolan is trying to push the boundaries.
Dude, I love that, dude. I love that. What are you doing, bro? I couldn't hear the fucking movie.
Of what's possible with sound, and I think it works in some cases. I think it's probably time he took a note from his peers. Mubi is a hand-curated online streaming platform that has an excellent selection of movies. Werner Herzog.
Not gonna lie, I can't even look at the stream when the guy's on screen. I can't stop looking at his teeth. You just know that it was Tarantino. No, that wasn't Tarantino. If it was Tarantino, it would have been like, there's no feet in this. How do you go about making an entire movie and not have feet exposition peppered in at numerous ridiculous points? What the fuck are you doing? Just don't even make movies at that point.